everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Trending Topics with BB. I'm back after the holiday break. I took the last episode. If you haven't been able to check it out, is available in video and audio form. That is available. I had a lovely conversation with two wonderful people who I found on social media who also like the show SEAL Team. And we had a lovely conversation about the episode before the holiday break. Now it's back this past Sunday. So maybe we'll do another episode talking about that show in the future. But I wanted to come back in 2022 and do a little bit of another solo episode of the pod because 2021 was a doozy. If you didn't notice, I took a lot of breaks from this podcast, off and on, for my mental health. Let's just say, well, overall, the last couple of years have been a clusterfuck. I'm no censorship. Let's just say it's been a clusterfuck with this pandemic. Now we're into more variants and such. But along those lines, I have gone through what you could say a couple years of burnout. In 2020, hilariously enough, if people don't know, the company that I used to work for almost 3 years, leading up to 2020, well, into 2020, I actually had gotten a promotion for my day job. A little background. Let's just talk a little bit about my day jobs, because I don't really talk about it much on the pod. So I basically, uh, in my last day job, ended up getting a promotion that sent me to move to Los Angeles, California at the beginning of 2020. Now, leading into 2020, it was a promotion. I was excited, new beginnings. Um, Spent most of my life in Arizona. So I was like, hey, a new beginning, a new promotion. Let's see where this leads. Mainly because, as you see here, I create content. I'm in the media. The job was in media because I was working for a company that did OTT, which is over the top advertising, which mainly is the advertisements for streaming platforms. Um, and basically, I I got a promotion. Sorry, notifications coming in. And little did I know that we were about to be hit with a world pandemic, which is kind of funny considering, like, actually, we kind of knew early 2019. Well, not early 2019. I would say fall of 2019. But that was back when political issues were different. People didn't believe it was an actual virus. We all thought this can't happen. And then, we started 2020 a little naive, going, hey, we're going to have life like as it should be. I did a lot of traveling for both my job and personal at the beginning of 2020. And thus, here we are 2 years later, still in a pandemic. Uh, some of us are vaccinated, some are not. And ergo, uh, in that year, I had a situation where the job didn't work out because of the pandemic. Um, Not really going to go into actual detail. But basically, I, you know, I saved up a bunch of money because, lockdowns and being able to work from home that allowed me to finish living. And then I left that job, took some time for myself, actually thought I was going to, well, actually went into studying to become an insurance salesman. Not really my bag. Um, as evident of me, whatever. Moved back to Arizona because for family reasons, really to be closer to family. The pandemic just made sense. So I spent 2020, and in that time, I ended up getting a new job, which is I currently am still in right now, my new day job. I still work in marketing / media, but more marketing, but different specific industry. And that allows me, well, I have to have a day job. I wish I could podcast as my day job. But the reason I'm telling you this kind of little background is that I originally started this podcast about a decade ago as a hobby. And I've had a blasty blast interviewing some musical heroes of mine, uh, some lovely friends, meeting people, talking about many different topics from natural health to trance music to TV shows. I've talked about the TV show Lucifer. I've talked about SEAL Team, like I recently did. Obviously, as a trending topics, I wanted this podcast to be able to talk about any subject. And what really makes sense is for me to kind of bring it home and tell a little bit more about me, without having it be like a formal interview of me on the pod. Kind of want to tell it from my perspective. So I've had guests on here. One of the main topics that I've talked about is mental health. And I want to do this because you could say I'm an advocate, but we need to end the stigma of mental health. We need to talk about it. We need to recognize that it exists in a lot of people and that it's not the same in every person out there. And this ties back to what I was talking about the last couple of years about the pandemic and jobs and everything. I found that in 2021, I became very burnt out with everything. This podcast, my day job, well, I still do my day job well. The monotony of the routine has gotten to me. The best we can. I work from home, which has its pros and its cons, as I've experienced in the last couple of years. I love that I don't commute, but I'm an extrovert, so I like the interaction of people that are not on screens. So that's been a struggle. But the reason I'm talking about this on the podcast is because in this burnout this last year, and I don't always talk about it, but I'm kind of I go down. I do a lot of research. I have OCD. I, I was diagnosed with generalized, anxiety, but I'm pretty sure I have OCD. I don't know. The point is, all of us have issues, and the burnout of the last couple of years, and I've had a doozy of a time being motivated to keep this podcast going in the last year. Now I have kept it going. I think 17 or 18 episodes were produced in 2021. Surprising to me considering I kept telling myself, I was like, I'm gonna do a few episodes, take a break. Do it a few episodes, take a break, mainly because I had to. And as I've alluded to in past episodes, the reason I've had to take a break with this podcast is because of many reasons. A, it started out as a hobby. And in this time, we've seen the explosion of podcasting. We've seen everybody and their brother make a podcast. We've seen a lot of people make a lot of money and a living off of podcasting. We've seen the media landscape change, the broadcasting landscape change, specifically because my day job, I was in streaming advertising for television for 3 years. So I understand the evolution of media and broadcasting, and I'm forever actually enthralled with this, considering my background and what my college degree is in communication and everything going along with that. But what I have found from such is that in all of my projects that I've done as hobbies, because actually before I started this podcast, I had a sports chat TV show on YouTube back when Google Plus was a thing. And if people don't know what Google Plus, sidebar, Google Plus was when Google tried to take down Facebook and create their own social media platform, which then didn't work very well because everybody on Google Plus talked about being on Google Plus and talked about taking them down Facebook, for which then a lot of people who worked in Google Plus either left Google to work for other companies, or Google just decided to dismantle and make everything that was unique to making Google Plus its platform specific apps such as Hangouts, such as other apps that were integrated into Google Plus, thus dismantling the service, which then turned the rest of us users into using Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and now TikTok. So anyway, but back in the day, I had a show called SportsChat.tv, which all those episodes are actually on my YouTube channel. And if you're watching this episode live on the YouTube channel, you can head over there right after this. If you see this later, you know where it is. If you're listening to this in the audio form, check it out on the YouTube, which, you can find. And then now, in the last recent years, I've actually converted the Sports Chat TV show into a podcast. It's now Sports Chat Podcast. If you search that, I've only released 3 episodes. One at the end of 2021. And if you listen to that podcast, you'll know why. But the reason I bring this up is, as a content creator, I have realized that this hobby that I started about a decade ago, I should have been a little bit more serious about, because obviously every other content creator right now is out there killing it, especially the people that are on Twitch. And if you're watching this on Twitch, shout out to you. If you're in the Discord, thank you for checking this out. But I have found that in my mental health hell of a burnout in this last year, that I need to figure out more how to create more content and be more excited about what I'm doing, which you may have realized that along with the Sports Chat podcast, this podcast, I also have repurposed a music blog into Twitch streams, the Love of Music Project, and recently announced today on the social medias that I will be starting to do music trivia streams on Twitch. Don't know how it's going to go. The details are on that episode. But the reason I'm bringing all of this up, and what seems like a big ramble of my brain, is that I have been doing it wrong. What started as a hobby that I was like, oh, this is fun. I'm not going to use this to monetize. I'm going to get my act together with a real day job. I'm finding that the burnout is basically my soul dying. Yes, that might be a dramatic way of putting it, but I feel like my soul is dying. But it's necessary in my adult, because I got to pay bills. So this whole thing. But as we have known from the pandemic in the last couple of years, and the Great Resignation is what they call it, I'm not the only one out there reevaluating their decisions, their career decisions, maybe going back to school, thinking about going back to school, changing careers, whatever you may be doing, go for it. Mainly because we only live one life. As we have seen, life could be shut down in 2 seconds. And so basically, in this about 13-minute ramble, I just kind of want to talk about a little bit where my burnout is coming from. Life. I also went through a lot of personal changes in the last year of moving and stuff that I won't get into. But it's just the self-awareness of where your mental health is very, you need to be self-aware. So what I mean by that is to be aware that you're not okay. To be aware that you're tired, mentally exhausted. To be aware that you're not the only one out there. Everybody's dealing with shit. To be aware that you may need help. To be aware that you may need to take a break. Because for those that are also on my YouTube, about 5 years ago, I quit cold turkey out of my own decision the medication I was on for my mental health. It was a generic form of Paxil called paroxetine. I actually have a couple videos that you can, maybe 3 videos on my YouTube channel And if you go back, you'll see that I'm literally like withdrawing off of this drug because what I found out is that I was taking a 3 to 4 times higher dosage than what is suggested in humans. I didn't know that my doctors over the years were just like, give her the highest thing because she's still not feeling well. Because every time I went into my doctor, I call my doctor my dealer because I'd go in there and I'd be like, hey, can I like wean off of this, or do you have any like natural ways of tackling depression and anxiety and how I'm feeling? Uh, and also, I'm getting a lot of side effects. I'm getting a bunch of weight, but I'm working out. Why is this the case? Why I'm eating well, but I'm still feeling like shit. I'm emotionally numb because of this. Can you? Can I get off of this? And I just made the hard decision with the help of a friend to fucking go cold turkey off of it because what it was doing is giving me all these physical and I just was not feeling well. I was actually feeling worse on the medication physically and biologically. Yeah, maybe my mental attitude had shifted, but that's because it makes you fucking numb a robot of a human. And I'm not trying to shame anybody out there on medications. Everybody's different. But personally, after being addicted to this medication for 6 years, said to myself, this is not working. And the more I go to my doctors, they're telling me either to increase my dosage or give me another drug on top of the drug I was doing that for a while. So I was, instead of saying, hey, maybe we can half your dosage, they were like, here's some more drugs. And hence the doctor being my dealer. So therefore, I wanted to get healthier. And I feel so much mentally clearer off my medication. And it's been about 4 or 5 years, but it's taken some time. I've also, a lot of the side effects that I suffered, I'm now fully like recovering. And it's taken this long for my body to change, for me to regulate my moods and all of this. But the reason I'm sharing this on the podcast, and you could have gotten a lot of this information from those videos on YouTube that I created, is I know we're all struggling. I know there's a lot of you struggling. Everybody has their issues, but we need to talk about them. And if you're not getting therapy, if you don't have somebody in your life that can help you, we need to lean on each other. And if you can't lean on somebody, there are now a lot of ways you can reach out for therapy. There's apps, there's meditation, there's all kinds of things you can do. But I just want to put it out there in terms of mental health. We need to destigmatize this by talking about it, by realizing we have an issue, by being self aware of the issues, and being, because this society of pushing it, oh, I don't have problems, or previous generations pushing it down. Anyway, so it's okay to not be okay. You've heard that, you've probably seen that out in social media or on the internet or somewhere. Maybe you've heard that on the radio, if you still listen to terrestrial radio, wherever it may be, it's the truth. Um, and this kind of segues into what I also wanted to announce, because it is 2022. It's a new year, and hopefully this will get my motivation, get my ass in gear. So if you go back maybe a couple years, 3 years into the podcast, I did these episodes called The Soapbox, where I would rant and rave about something that was bothering me. Sometimes it's a silly subject, as like, it still bothers me, by the way, but side-by-side couples, go listen to that episode, because I'm still witnessing this out in the wild. Or maybe it's something having to do with the electronic dance music industry, because I'm huge into it. Love the music, go to events. So I did a soapbox on that. But I've also, I don't know if it's specifically a soapbox, I think it is, in an episode called The Modern Day Cult. And I decided in 2021 to start writing a book that's going to be titled the modern day cult. I might add more to the title, but you know what I mean. And the reason I just decided to announce this because I've mentioned it to a few people anyway. I'm still writing the book. The subject's heavily being researched and cited in psychology and psychiatry, and it kind of pertains to mental health. So I wanted to talk about it on this episode of the podcast to kind of just announce it. I don't have the artwork for the book cover done. I don't really have a lot of it. I have to look into self-publishing for this, but I am literally writing a book about the modern day cult and in my experience in a modern day cult. And what I mean by that is we are, as humans, and I say we because everybody's doing this, but in entertainment or pop culture or sports or whatever you want to call it, over the years, and the internet and social media has given us permission to do this, is fall down a rabbit hole of heavily following an artist, a an event, a sports team, or whatever, what have you, whatever you're into, whatever you're, I mean, conventions out there are great. I've attended one, going to another one for one of the TV shows I've talked to you about on this podcast soon. So basically, the point is, in the modern day cult, we find ourselves falling into a following of people that is a little singularity and super unhealthy for our mental health. While at the time we might think it is an escape from our everyday life, which I completely understand, it's not entirely healthy from my perspective and my experience to fall down that rabbit hole of one entity. Considering I have a shit ton of interests, I love pop culture as a whole. In the past, when my mental health wasn't the best, or I wasn't aware of what was going on in my head, I went down, I followed a band heavily for 7 years straight, spent a lot of money on doing it, came out of it realizing this is a cult. And specifically because when I started following the band, it was about when social media started, and it kind of went hand in hand in terms of how it's gone. And it's now 11, 12 years, maybe 13 years later, and it is what it is. Now, it could be, in writing my experience in this book, it's probably going to be very controversial to the people that I'm still friends with from the cult, as I call it, or from others that see themselves within it in other cults. But anyway, I'm writing this book, and I started writing it about 6 months ago. I've taken a lot of time off, mainly because my burnout has led me to not have time to. Well, I've let my burnout take over my writing time, basically, because in the back of my mind, I'm like, I got to do the pod, and then I got to create content for this when I'm not doing my day job. I gotta live life. I gotta do whatever. I gotta do whatever. No, I'm not making this a resolution, but I'm just saying I'm gonna work more on the book this year to hopefully just get a first draft. Start looking into publishing because it's probably going to be another couple of years before I actually publish it at this rate. Hopefully not actually, but so yeah. So it's called The Modern Day Cult. If you want to go back and listen to that episode, you'll find out a little bit more in detail of what the cult I'm referring to. Not trying to offend people that are still in this cult. I'm just coming from a perspective of both within it and without it, and mental health, and what I see in other people, and how it creates behavior problems, and so on and so forth. I figured, why not? I should have been an author after college anyway, because I wrote so much in college, mainly because it was required of my major. But on the second hand, I've also blogged a lot back when blogging was a thing about different topics. So I figured, why not actually write a book and get published? I don't expect to be like a bestseller. I just just want to get it published. That's the goal. So anyway, I wanted to announce it. I don't know why if I was afraid to announce it before. I was trying to make it all perfect. It's not going to be perfect. I don't even have it done yet. So, and I'm sure, as evident from a lot of the research I've been doing on cults, on psychological ramifications, because that's going to be in the book, citing a lot of people who are well versed in it more than I am. That it's something that has been written about. There's a lot of papers, a lot of books out there, but I want to write it from my perspective, my experiences. So hopefully, those that listen to this podcast, you'll be looking forward to finding out more about that. And if you have any inquiries, wow, let me speak. If you have any inquiries, whatever, to hit up basically the website. So anyway, so I wanted to talk about that and kind of wanted to give you a little update about kind of where my head's at. I want to keep this podcast going. I would love to be able to make it my day job. At this point, I don't know how I can do it in the saturated world we're living in podcasting, but again, it is what it is. So, on that note, I guess I want to leave you with, I hope 2020 is so much better for us all. I have some things to look forward to this year. And I want to thank everybody who stuck with this podcast. Or if you're new, thank you. All details can be found if you're watching this in video form on the podcast website at trendingtopicswithbb.podcast.com, as well as, log on to trendingtopicswithbb.podcast.com if you're listening to this in the audio form. I want to thank everybody who has left a favorable rating or comment on the previous podcasting platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, wherever you can. But at the end of 2021, we found out that you can now leave reviews on Spotify. So if you're listening to this, please leave a favorable rating. It helps push this up in the algorithm, helps get this podcast suggested to other people on Spotify. I'm just a little small potatoes podcast that I've been doing, and out of the goodness of my heart, if you do listen to this, and I know there are people out there that do, please leave a rating wherever you are. Or shout me out on social media. You know where to find the pod at Trending Topics with BB on Facebook, at TT with BB on both Instagram and Twitter. And thank you to everybody, and have a happy 2022. And hope everybody had a great holiday season. And thanks again for listening. And I will see you on the next episode. And I will preface with this, is that if you're watching this set's going to change because I will be relocating at some point. But be on the lookout for new episodes, and see you on the next episode.